Welcome, dear reader, to a world where the boundaries between dreams and reality are not as clear as we might hope. The Enchanted Sleepwalk is a journey into the mysterious realms of sleep, where ancient curses, powerful magic, and hidden secrets await. Have you ever woken up in a place you don't remember falling asleep in? Have you ever wondered why some dreams feel so real that they seem to reach beyond the confines of your mind? What if those dreams were not just dreams at all, but a path to something far greater or darker? In this story, you will meet a protagonist like no other, someone who begins to walk in their sleep, but not just to stumble through the night. These steps lead them into a world where the line between the waking and dreaming is fragile. Will they unravel the curse that has plagued their village for centuries, or will they lose themselves in a world that is not their own? So, let us begin the journey into the Enchanted Sleepwalk. Chapter 1. A dreamer's fate. The air was thick with the scent of pine and earth as the soft glow of the early morning sun filtered through the mist that clung to the village. It was a quiet morning in the small town of Hallowbrook, nestled deep within the heart of the forest, where the trees seemed to whisper secrets and the winds carried stories long forgotten. But for one resident of the village, it was anything but a peaceful day. Protagonist, a young adult with a restless mind and an even more restless spirit, awoke with a start. Their eyes snapped open to find themselves lying in a strange position on the floor, cold hardwood beneath their back, the remnants of an unsettling dream still vivid in their mind. The sunlight was weak, not yet fully risen, and the room was silent except for the sound of their own rapid breathing. A soft groan escaped their lips as they struggled to push themselves upright. How had they ended up here again? The familiar, unnerving feeling of disorientation crept over them, making their heart beat faster. This wasn't the first time it had happened. In fact, it had been happening with increasing frequency over the past few weeks, sleepwalking, though not in the usual sense. Normally, people might stumble around a bit, mumble incoherently, or wander to a different part of the house before returning to their bed. But for protagonist, it was always different. They found themselves far from home, in places they didn't recognize, or more disturbingly, in places they didn't remember going. It was as though their body moved without their permission, guided by forces beyond their control. Shaking their head to dispel the lingering fog of sleep, protagonist glanced around the room. This wasn't their bedroom. It wasn't even the guest room. The walls were bare, the floorboards creaked underfoot, and the air smelled faintly of something musty, like old books and forgotten corners. It took them a moment to realize they were in the attic, a space they had only ever visited when they were younger. "What?" they muttered to themselves, rubbing their eyes in confusion. The attic had long since been abandoned. There was nothing up here except old furniture, dusty trunks, and memories locked away in forgotten boxes. Yet, here they were, as though summoned by something, or someone. Their heart pounded with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Something felt wrong, but they couldn't put their finger on what it was. They stood up slowly, trying to steady their breathing. The first thing they noticed was the silence. The kind of silence that felt too thick, too heavy. Even the wind outside had stopped, and the usual chirping of birds in the trees was absent. Then they saw it, a small, peculiar object on the floor, half hidden beneath an old blanket. It was an ornate box, the kind that might have belonged to an aristocrat or a collector of fine things, yet its craftsmanship was strange. The edges were too sharp, the metal too dark. The box seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, almost as though it were alive, calling to them. A shiver ran down their spine. Instinctively, they reached for it. As soon as their fingers brushed the cold metal, a strange sensation shot up their arm, like a bolt of lightning, sharp, electric, and unnerving. Their breath caught in their throat, and for a moment, everything around them seemed to shift. The attic disappeared, replaced by an endless sea of swirling colors. They heard whispers, voices in a language they couldn't understand, calling to them from far beyond. But just as quickly as it had started, the vision faded, leaving them breathless and confused. They stumbled back, heart hammering in. Their chest. The box was now empty, its lid wide open as if it had never been closed. But they couldn't remember having opened it. They couldn't remember even touching it. Protagonist stood frozen, looking at the object with a growing sense of dread. What was this? Why had they come up here? And more importantly, why was it so familiar? The questions swirled in their mind, but they couldn't find answers. Not yet. Then, a voice echoed from the door, breaking the silence. Protagonist, are you up there? It was their friend's name, who had been helping to take care of them ever since the sleepwalking incidents began. They must have noticed the time and come looking for them. I'm coming. Protagonist called back, quickly hiding the strange box under the blanket. They could feel their hands shaking as they descended the attic stairs, their thoughts racing. What had just happened? Was it part of the sleepwalking episodes? Or was there something more to it? Friend's name was waiting for them at the bottom of the stairs, a worried frown on their face. They had been increasingly concerned about Protagonist's nocturnal wanderings, as the episodes seemed to be, getting more intense and unpredictable. You've been gone for hours. I called your name, but you didn't respond, Friend's name said, their voice tinged with worry. Are you okay? You look strange. I'm fine, Protagonist replied quickly, though their voice betrayed their unease. I was just sleepwalking again. But something happened. I found this box up there. But before they could finish, the air in the room seemed to change. The temperature dropped suddenly, and the hairs on the back of their neck stood on end. A soft whisper, too faint to make out, fluttered around them like a forgotten memory. It was as if the very air had thickened with secrets that wanted to be discovered. And deep down, Protagonist knew one thing for certain. Their life had just taken a turn towards something far beyond their control. Chapter 2. The Sleepwalkers' Council. The days that followed were a blur for Protagonist. Every night, they drifted deeper into their sleepwalking episodes, each one more intense and strange than the last. The box, which they had hidden under the blanket, remained on their mind, like an unanswered question nagging at them. They couldn't shake the feeling that it was more than just an artifact. It was a key to something far greater, something that held power over them. But with each morning, when the sunlight poured into their room and the sleepwalking haze wore off, they struggled to grasp what had truly happened. The memories felt fractured, as if they were trying to piece together a puzzle with missing pieces. The box was only the first in a series of strange occurrences that seemed to follow them, like shadows clinging to their every move. It was the day after their encounter in the attic that Friend's name finally had enough. They had been patient, but concern had turned to fear. It was obvious to them that Protagonist wasn't simply sleepwalking. This was something far more dangerous, something they couldn't deal with on their own. "Enough of this, protagonist," friend's name, said one afternoon, their voice firm and resolute. "You need to talk to someone who can help you." "I don't even know what's happening to me," protagonist muttered, rubbing their temples. "It's like I'm losing control of my own body, but I can't explain why." "You don't need to explain it to me," friend's name replied, their eyes narrowed with concern. "But there are people in the village who might know. There's a group hidden away that deals with things like this. I think it's time you went to see them." Protagonist hesitated. The idea of seeking help from a group that dealt with sleepwalking and curses felt strange. They didn't believe in such things, at least, not until everything began to unravel. But the more they thought about it, the more the pieces seemed to fit together. The strange box, the visions, the feeling that they were being drawn to something. They could no longer ignore the possibility that they were part of something much larger than themselves. Reluctantly, they agreed. Friend's name didn't waste time. Without another word, they led protagonist to the farthest corner of the village, to a hidden part of the forest that few people dared to enter. The trees here were ancient, their trunks twisted in unnatural ways, as if they were guarding something buried deep within the earth. "We're almost there," friend's name said, their voice low. "Just follow me and stay close. Don't stray from the path." The forest grew darker as they ventured deeper, the canopy of leaves above blocking out most of the sunlight. It felt as though the world around them was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. The air was thick with the scent of moss and wet earth, and the faint sound of rustling leaves was the only noise that kept them company. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they arrived at a small clearing. In the center of the clearing stood an old, weathered building, barely more than a stone structure, half covered in ivy and moss. Its door was made of iron, with intricate designs etched into its surface, almost as if the metal itself had been shaped by magic. "This is it," friend's name whispered, turning to protagonist. "This is the Sleepwalkers' Council." Protagonist stared at the door, feeling a mixture of awe and trepidation. It was impossible to tell how old the structure was. It seemed to blend into the landscape, as if it had been here for centuries, hidden from the world. The idea of a council, a secret organization dealing with sleepwalking, felt surreal. But after everything they had experienced, they were no longer in a position to doubt. Before they could gather their thoughts, the door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit room. Inside, the air smelled faintly of herbs and incense, and the walls were lined with bookshelves filled with old tomes and scrolls. Several people stood inside, some standing in conversation, others reading quietly. All of them wore robes that seemed to shimmer with a faint, ethereal glow. A tall, elderly woman approached them as soon as they entered. Her hair was silver, her face lined with age, but her eyes were sharp, filled with wisdom that seemed to pierce through protagonist, very soul. She studied them for a long moment, as though she was assessing their worth. "Protagonist, I presume," she said in a calm, steady voice. "I've been expecting you." Protagonist blinked in surprise. "Expecting me? How? How did you know I was coming?" "We know many things here," the woman replied with a small smile, though there was a trace of sadness in her gaze. "Things that others cannot understand. Things that you will soon come to realize." Protagonist exchanged a nervous glance with friend's name, but the latter merely nodded encouragingly, silently urging them to trust this strange group. "My name is Elder's Name," the woman continued. "I lead the Sleepwalkers' Council. We are the keepers of the ancient knowledge surrounding the curse that affects our village. You, protagonist, are not the first to walk the path you are on. Others have come before you, and some, like you, have had their lives changed forever." Protagonist frowned, feeling a cold chill spread down their spine. "A curse," they echoed, their voice hoarse. "What do you mean?" I don't understand." "You will," the elder said softly. "But first, we must start with the truth of who you are. You are not just anyone, protagonist. You are a dreamwalker, a rare individual who has the ability to enter the dream world while awake. This is not merely sleepwalking. You are being drawn into a place where the very fabric of reality bends, where dreams and nightmares come alive. And if you do not learn to control your abilities, the consequences will be far worse than you can imagine." Protagonist felt their legs weaken beneath them as the weight of the elder's words sank in. A dreamwalker? Could this really be true? Could everything that had been happening to them be part of something far more sinister, something ancient and beyond their understanding? The elder's eyes softened as she placed a hand on protagonist's shoulder. "But you are not alone in this. We, the Sleepwalkers, have been waiting for someone like you. You have the power to end the curse, to unlock the mysteries of the dream world and return the balance that has been lost for centuries. But first, you must learn what it means to walk between worlds, to navigate the dreamscape and face the dangers that lie within." The room fell silent as the weight of her words hung in the air. Protagonist felt a mixture of fear, awe, and excitement, an overwhelming sense that their life was about to change in ways they couldn't even begin to comprehend. "We will teach you," the elder said, her voice steady. "But you must be ready. This journey will take you to places that no one has ever returned from. Are you prepared for what lies ahead?" Protagonist stood silent for a moment, their heart racing. They didn't know if they were ready, but deep down, they knew there was no turning back. The dream world was waiting, and so was the curse, and they were about to take their first steps into it. Chapter 3. The dream world awakens the fire in there. Hearth crackled as the Sleepwalkers' Council gathered around, the room bathed in the flickering glow of its flames. Protagonist sat at the center of the circle, feeling the weight of the elder's words pressing down on them like a heavy cloak. The dream world, a place they had never imagined could exist outside of their own troubled dreams, was real, and now they were being thrust into it. "Elder, are you certain?" A voice interrupted the silence. It was a younger man, his voice trembling with unease. "Is protagonist truly ready for what lies ahead? We've never had anyone walk the dream world without guidance from the very start." The elder's name, fixed him with a gaze that was both reassuring and stern. "We have no choice," she replied, her voice calm but resolute. "The curse has already begun to claim them, and we cannot afford to wait any longer." The room went quiet again, and for a moment, protagonist felt like they were floating in a space of their own, separated from the conversations around them by the growing sense of dread. The idea of entering the dream world wasn't just terrifying, it felt like stepping into the unknown, where reality could twist and contort into something unrecognizable. And yet, they had no choice. They had been chosen, or perhaps cursed, to walk this path. Protagonist finally spoke, their voice hoarse. What is the dream world, exactly? What does it want with me? The elder's face softened with a mix of compassion and sorrow. She stood and approached a large stone table in the center of the room. Etched into the surface were ancient symbols, runes that seemed to shift and pulse in the dim light. The dream world is both a place and a force, she began, her fingers tracing the intricate patterns on the stone. It exists alongside our reality, a parallel world where dreams are born, live, and die. It is a place of endless possibilities, where anything you can imagine might come to life. But it is also a dangerous place, full of forgotten memories, ancient beings, and forces that do not care for the laws of our world. Protagonist swallowed hard. So, it's not just dreams? It's real, and far more dangerous than you can imagine, the elder confirmed. The dream world is not merely a place for your subconscious. It is a living entity, and it is tied to your fate. The curse that haunts this village is woven into its fabric, and you, protagonist, are the key to either breaking it or letting it consume everything around you. The weight of her words settled into protagonist's chest, heavy as stone. The more they heard, the less they understood. How could they be the key to anything? They weren't special, just a person plagued by strange dreams and inexplicable sleepwalking, or so they had thought. Now, it seemed that their life was entangled with something far older, far more powerful. "Why me?" they whispered, their voice barely audible. The elder gave them a sympathetic look. "You have the gift of walking between worlds, a rare and dangerous gift. It is both a blessing and a curse. Most never know they have it until it is too late. But you are different. You have been chosen by the dream world itself." "Chosen?" Protagonist repeated, their confusion deepening. "How? And why me?" The elder's eyes darkened slightly. The dream world does not choose lightly. It chooses those with the ability to navigate its depths, those who can bear the burden of its power. But it also chooses those who have been marked by a curse, one that has been passed down through generations. It has chosen you because your bloodline is connected to the curse that has plagued this village for centuries. Protagonist felt as though the ground had shifted beneath them. "You mean my family? My ancestors?" "Yes," the elder nodded. "Your ancestors were the last to hold the power of the Dreamwalkers, the original guardians of the dream world. They kept the balance between our world and the dream world, protecting the village from its dangers. But somewhere along the way, something went wrong. The balance shifted. The dream world became unstable, and the curse began to grow." The elder's gaze seemed to drift far away, lost in some distant memory. "Your bloodline was meant to fix the damage, to restore the balance. But over the centuries, the power faded, and the Dreamwalkers became lost to time. You are the last of them, the last who can save the village. The curse has marked you, protagonist, and the dream world has called you." Protagonist stared at the elder, their mind racing. Their family, what could they possibly have to do with this? They had always thought their lineage was unremarkable, just a simple family living in a quiet village. But now, everything was different. They had been chosen, marked, and they had no idea how to bear such a weight. But What exactly is this curse? Protagonist asked, their voice cracking. The elder turned away for a moment, as if gathering her thoughts. Then she spoke, her words heavy with a kind of sorrow that sent chills down Protagonist's spine. The curse is the result of an ancient betrayal, she began slowly. Centuries ago, your ancestors sealed the dream world from the rest of the world to protect both realms. But one of them, a dream walker, betrayed the others. They sought to use the dream world's power for their own gain, to bend reality to their will. In doing so, they shattered the barrier between the two worlds, causing chaos. The betrayal twisted the dream world, and the curse spread. It has been growing ever since, feeding on the fears and desires of those who have walked its paths. But why now? Protagonist asked. Why is it happening to me? The elder looked directly at Protagonist. For the first time, her eyes filled with a quiet urgency. The curse has always waited for someone like you to awaken it. The dream world is in turmoil, and it has been searching for a new vessel, someone with the strength to walk its paths and restore balance. The events that have been unfolding in the village, the strange dreams, the sleepwalking, the rising unrest, are all signs of the curse's return. And you, Protagonist, are the one who must face it. A chill ran through Protagonist's body as they realized the magnitude of the task ahead. They were no longer just a person haunted by strange dreams. They were the last hope for their village, the key to saving or destroying everything. You must prepare, the elder said, her voice unwavering. To walk the dream world is not a simple matter. It requires discipline, control, and a deep understanding of the forces at play. And you will need to face your greatest fears, for they are the guardians of the dream world. You will face creatures born from nightmare, challenges that will test your every limit. But you must succeed. If you fail, the curse will spread beyond the village. It will consume everything. Protagonist swallowed hard, trying to steady their breath. They felt the weight of the responsibility crushing them. How could they possibly be ready for such a task? How could they possibly face a world that existed in dreams, where reality no longer held sway? But deep inside, a spark of determination ignited. They had no choice. The dream world had called to them, and they had answered. Now they had to walk its path, no matter the cost. We'll start your training immediately, the elder said, her tone softening. There's much to learn, but you will not be alone. The sleepwalkers will guide you, and together we will face what is to come. With that, the elder turned and gestured for Protagonist to follow her. The room fell silent as Protagonist rose, their heart heavy but resolute. They had no idea what awaited them in the dream world, but they were ready to find out.